Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
We are the Brutal, Bizarre, and Boozy Podcast. I'm Declan, the son.
And I'm Jane, the mom. This is the podcast where we talk about brutal crimes like serial killers and the random one-off murder. We will tell you about bizarre occurrences like alien abductions and monsters in the dark. And we just might get you drunk with cocktails themed around one of our stories.
At the very end of every show, we like to lighten things up and cleanse the palate from the tragic and terrifying stories. So we end our time with a chaser. You might get to hear crazy stories about our pets or just silly movie recommendations.
Give us a listen. We are the Brutal, Bizarre, and Boozy Podcast.
Hey, what's up, you guys?
Hey, what's up, you guys?
I'm Kathryn,
And I'm Hayley,
and we are Saturdays for the Ghouls.
a Podmoth Podcast.
How are you, Hayley?
I'm doing pretty good over here. How are you doing, Kathryn?
Doing dandy. I'm doing great.
The dandiest of lions.
Yes. Yeah. I guess so. Yeah. The dandiest of lions.
Dandy lion.
Did you know that dandelions are those puffy ones that you blow on, but they're also the yellow ones? Crazy.
No.
They're both called dandelions. They're just in different forms.
Different evolutions.
Yes, different evolutions. Anyway, that was your fun fact for the day. I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
I think we're recording a podcast.
Oh, yeah. Guess what week it is?
It's Kathryn's week.
Kathryn's week. Guess what we're talking about? She already knows. But she doesn't know what true crime. Are you excited to hear a true crime right now?
I'm so excited.
Are you wanting me to just get into it or what? Do you have anything to tell us who it is before we hop into it?
Just so you know, I was told that I could not do a true crime last week because we're doing a true crime this week. And I just realized I can't do one next week either.
Okay.
So, it's fine. It's fine. I prefer your true crimes.
You could do one next week if you really wanted to.
Yeah, but then I feel like I'm just copying you.
Yeah. But almost every episode that Hayley gives us now is true crime. So she's coming for my brand, honestly.
I'm coming for the brand. And you're coming for mine with the spooky places.
Spooky places. Next, I'm going to do a horror movie.
Do a horror movie. Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a horror movie soon. But today is true crime. Okay, let's hop into it. So today we're going to talk about true crime, about Rodney Alcala. He was born in San Antonio, Texas, and he was the third of 4 siblings. And in 1951, his family moved to Mexico. His father abandoned the family in 1954, and his mom moved them back to LA. And Rodney was super academically gifted and popular while he was growing up. Now, quick question for Hayley. Do we think we're talking about the victim or the bad guy?
The bad guy.
We'll only find out after this episode.
There's the only red flag I've seen so far is like daddy issues, but
yes. And some of them are academically gifted in school.
Yeah, some are like really like Ted Bundy.
Yeah. But we'll only find out at the end. Maybe.
Looks at notes.
Literally the next paragraph. After graduation, he joined the army, and his commanding officer described him in some very colorful words. Would you like to know what those words are?
They're probably really mean.
Yes, they are, quote, manipulative, vindictive, and insubordinate.
Oh, that does not sound like the man we just heard about 2 seconds ago.
No, it does not.
Sounds like he's a Scorpio.
Honestly, it does. I don't know when his birthday is. I didn't look it up.
Wait, didn't you say he was born?
Yeah, I just said he was born in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh.
I can pull it up for you. It's right here in my notes.
Okay.
He was born, August 23rd, 43. I don't know what that is. But we're in it right now.
It's Virgo.
No. Leo?
Virgo, then.
Virgo. Okay.
Oh, it's literally the first. It is the cusp. He's the Leo Virgo cusp. But it's the first day of Virgo.
Yeah. I guess I could see him being a Leo. Okay.
Anyway.
So supposedly during his time in the army, though, he apparently had assaulted many women. And in 64, he had a complete nervous breakdown and went AWOL. He hitchhiked all the way from North Carolina to California to go live with his mom. And at this point, a military psychologist had diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, and he was discharged from the army. He was later diagnosed as a narcissist with BPD, which is borderline personality disorder. After he was discharged, he went to school, UCLA of the Fine Arts, and then he went to NYU, where he studied film with none other than Roman Polanski, which, if we have remembered from some other episodes, Roman is a director and a screenplay writer who made Rosemary's Baby, The Pianist, Carnage, and like a bunch of other movies. And he's also allegedly a super fucking bad guy. But this isn't about Roman. This is about Rodney. So we're gonna start our story about Rodney here on September 25th, 1968. He was probably about 20 something, mid 20s maybe at this time. So a witness called police after seeing Rodney kidnap and assault an 8-year-old girl, Tali Shapiro, from Los Angeles. She was walking to school and he was driving and following her, and he asked her if she wanted a ride, and he told her that he knew her parents. So she got in and he lured her to his apartment, and the police arrived just in time to save her, but unfortunately it left Shapiro in critical condition. Tali was in critical condition because she had been raped and beaten by him with a metal rod. So they did save her life, and she didn't have to die, I guess.
Yeah.
She was in a coma for 32 days, and Rodney had fled, so they didn't have him, like, they didn't arrest him at that time, and they didn't know where he went.
What the fuck?
And so after that, he moved to New York and went to NYU at that time under the name John Berger, Berger. And when he was on the run, Rodney started working as a counselor at a children's art camp. And
Gross.
yeah, he had a job with the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association where he worked apparently in the same office as someone named Richard Cottingham, which is a serial killer that is also nicknamed the Torso Killer or the Times Square Ripper. And he had killed at least 18 people, but apparently they were completely unaware of each other. They were not like buddies or anything, but apparently they worked in the same office at Blue Cross Blue Shield the same time.
That's crazy.
That was crazy when I read that. On June 12th of 1971, so about 4 years after, 3.5 years after the thing that happened with Tali, a flight attendant, Cornelia Criley, who was 23, was found raped and murdered in her apartment in Manhattan. This case grew cold and there was no arrest made for her death. FBI added Rodney, though, to a list of the 10 most wanted fugitives and posted his photo in post offices all over the United States for what happened to Tali because they were looking for Rodney. 2 of the kids that went to the children's art camp saw his photo at the post office and said, that looks a lot like John Berger, who's one of my camp counselors at camp. And so Rodney was captured at that time and sent to California. And instead of charging him with rape and attempted murder for the case of Tali Shapiro, he was convicted of child molestation for the attack and sentenced to 3 years. So they didn't charge him for rape and attempted murder. They just charged him for child molestation. And so they gave him 3 years and he got out 17 months later.
Wow.
So he didn't even have to serve all 3 years.
Good behavior or some shit.
Yeah, so he was let out on parole 17 months later. I put in my notes, fuck that shit. 2 months after he was released, though, he was arrested again for assaulting a 13-year-old who accepted a ride from him home from school. In 1976, he was paroled after serving 2 more years. And in 1977, his parole officer gave him permission to travel to New York again. And I said, why the fuck would they do that?
Yeah, why?
So you could have less visibility over your paroled person? Like that was bonkers to me that they would even let him do that. That same year, July 15th, Ellen Jane Hover, a 23-year-old New York socialite and aspiring model, went missing. She was the daughter of the nightclub named Herman Hoover and the goddaughter of very popular artists Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. Later that year, Rodney was arrested regarding the Shapiro case in New Hampshire, and they did question him about Ellen Hoover and to see if he knew maybe what happened to her, but he said he didn't know who she was and he didn't have anywhere information about where she was. And because they had no body or proof that he was ever in contact with her, they released him. Unfortunately, her remains were found nearly a year later in the Rockefeller estate on the hillside looking over the Hudson River. Her planner that was with her remains had one modeling session on the day that she went missing with an individual named John fucking Berger. It didn't say John fucking Berger in the notebook. I'm sure it just said John Berger, but I'm just saying for emphasis, that's his alias if you don't remember. Okay, so in 1978, that next year, Rodney returns to LA and he works at the LA Times. During this time, there's a task force searching for the Hillside Strangler, and they interviewed him to see if maybe he was the Hillside Strangler, but he was eventually ruled out. And if you're unfamiliar with the Hillside Strangler, he killed 10 women and girls from 1977 to 1978. But they ruled out that it wasn't him. And during his time in LA, he told everyone that he was a fashion photographer, and he would ask men and women to pose for his portfolio, and he would show off his photos at work. But the weirdest thing was he was showing all these photos, but they were just a bunch of naked young men and women, which I put in parentheses probably teens, which is insane that your coworker is showing you their modeling portfolio of nude teens.
And no one's thinking anything of it.
The late 70s, I guess that's how it was. I have no idea. The subjects in his portfolio are all unidentified to these days, but police assume that these are victims of cold cases because they don't know who those people are. And so that's not great. September 13th, Rodney appears as a contestant on the dating game, and the host described him as a photographer, a skydiver, and rides a motorcycle. Another male contestant described him as strange. And in the end, though, he won, and his prize was to win a date with a bachelorette named Cheryl Bradshaw. This icon of a woman saw Rodney face to face and refused to go on a date with him because she said that he was too creepy. I was like, Cheryl, I fuck with you for real.
I think I've seen that video.
Yes, that's a very popular clip of Rodney on the show. In 1979, February 14th, Monique Hoyt was hitchhiking and Rodney picked her up. He took her to his apartment and he raped her, and then they drove out to basically the middle of nowhere where he made her model in her underwear, and he took photos of her, then raped her again there. Then she was bound and gagged, and he assaulted her again multiple times. After that, he hit her head against a rock and put her back in the car. And on the way back, they stopped at a gas station and he went to a restroom, and she took this moment to escape the car. As soon as she got out, she found a safe place and reported to the police. And he was arrested at that time, but his mom paid his bail and they released him. And that was in February. And so then on June 20th, 1979, Robin Christine Samso was riding her bike and went missing on her way home from her ballet class. 12 days later, her body was found in the foothills of LA, and there was evidence of her being beaten, raped, and stabbed. And Robin's friends said that a stranger had approached them asking to photograph them, and they made a sketch of the man, and Rodney's PO recognized him from that sketch. So in July of that same year, Rodney was arrested and charged with the murder of Robin Christine Samso. In 1980, in June and May, Rodney is convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of Robin. So here we are, and he's sentenced to death. So I guess that's it, right?
No.
That's never it, right? In 1984, the death penalty was overturned by the California Supreme Court, and due to procedural errors in the trial, so the jury was told about his prior sex crimes. Potentially, this could have been used as a reason to give him the death penalty over a different sentence. So basically, his whole sentencing was thrown out because the jury was given information that they shouldn't have been given to decide his fate of the Robin situation. And that was in 84, which was 4 years after he was sentenced to death. And so in 86, Rodney is retried and convicted again and sentenced to death once more. And now we're done. No. In 1992, which was about 6 years later after he was sentenced to death again, Rodney filed a petition of habeas corpus. And if you don't know what that is, it's in the Latin translation, it was that you have a body or produce the body. And this is when a prisoner requests to see a judge because they think they were unlawfully obtained. This position put everything, including his death sentence, on hold until they could review the petition. In 2001, which was a big jump of 11 years, or no, 9 years, the judge granted his petition and overturned Rodney's second conviction of the death sentence. In 2003, they upheld his petition because the witness was not able to support him against the park ranger who had been, quote unquote, hypnotized by the police. Honestly, it felt like a lot of this information was made up and it was a little muddy, or I'm just an idiot and I don't understand like what was happening there. But at the end of the day, Rodney's DNA was used to be linked to multiple cold cases at this time. They were trying to find any way to put this motherfucker away. You know what I mean? Any fucking way to put him away. So they found his DNA was linked to multiple cold cases, which led to new charges. Firstly, his semen was linked to a rape and murder of 2 women from LA who are unnamed. Secondly, in 2004, the next year, his DNA was linked to the following murders. Jill Barcombe, 18 years old, and on November 9th, 1977, her body was disposed of in Mulholland Drive in LA, and her body was balled up, quote, balled up, like in the fetal position, and she was naked from the waist down. She had been sexually assaulted, strangled, and beaten. Before Rodney was linked to this case, the police assumed that this was a victim of the Hillside Strangler, and then it was decided that they were unrelated and her case grew cold. The next murder that his DNA was linked to was Georgia Wickstead, 27, on December 16th, 1977. She was a nurse that was found dead in her apartment. She was last seen when she drove a coworker home from the bar, and she was reported missing when she didn't show up to work the next day. The police showed up at her home, and there was evidence of forced entry. And Georgia was there, naked on the bedroom floor, strangled with her own nylons. She was, quote, sexually assaulted, and her skull had been bashed in, and her genitals had been mutilated. The next murder that was connected to his DNA was Charlotte Lamb in June 24th of 1978. She was a legal secretary from Santa Monica, and her body was found in the shared laundry room in her apartment building. And she had been, quote, sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled with a shoelace and posed with her hands behind her back. And then lastly, Jill Parento, on June 13th, 1979, she left for work early to go to a baseball game, and the police were alerted when she didn't report for work. Her apartment had also had signs of forced entry, and, quote, she had been sexually assaulted, beaten, and strangled. Needless to say, he went to a third trial, and this was while he was incarcerated.
Third time's a charm.
We fucking hope so. And so while he was incarcerated, he wrote a book about how he was, quote, innocent for the murder of Robin. And the book is called You, the Jury. You, the Jury. He also, I don't understand how these killer guys are able to write books from fucking prison, though. Why? It's because I guess you can self-publish anything. I don't know. It's fucking wild to me. He also tried to file 2 lawsuits against California prison system for a slip and fall incident and refusing to give him a low-fat diet.
Oh, boo fucking who.
Yeah. If you'd like to be in control of your own diet, don't commit
Maybe don't go to
crimes.
prison.
Don't go to prison, and you can be in charge of your own diet.
Maybe
Anyway.
don't assault and murder people.
Yeah. Fucking crazy idea. Don't kill people. Weird. Don't kill people. Okay, so now we're in 2010. Okay, March of 2010. Rodney is tried for the murders of Jill, Georgia, Charlotte, Jill, and Robin. Okay.
There's 2 Jills?
Yes. The first Jill is Jill Barcombe, And the second Jill is Jill Parento. They're separated by 2 years or so
Dang.
in their case. During the trial, Rodney defended himself.
All right, Ted Bundy.
Rodney was his own fucking lawyer, okay? Supposedly, he spent 5 hours in court being the interrogator and the witness to himself, asking himself questions and then answering them.
Wow.
And I was like, this probably looked like a fucking shit show. Quote, he even changed the voices that he was doing. Did you blah, 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 blah? No, I didn't. Blah, 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 blah. Like, he made a show of it. His main focus was to prove that he was innocent for the murder of Robin, and he provided very little, if no information to any of the other convictions. Basically, all he said was, quote, he could not remember killing any of the women, but he spent most of his time sitting there saying that he didn't kill Robin and arguing the fact that he didn't kill Robin. But he was on trial for Jill and Georgia, Charlotte, Jill, and Robin, but he only talked about Robin for almost 5 hours.
Jeez.
After less than 2 days of deliberation, the jury found him guilty on all 5 accounts and sentenced him to death again.
Hell yeah, again.
That sound from TikTok that's like, again.
Again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sentencing, the LA and New York City police released 120 pictures of the model's photographs, okay, from his portfolio. They could only release 120 because over 900 other photos could not be made public due to the sexually explicit content of the photos. 900 other photos. They could only make public 120. Anyway, they wanted to know if there was any chance of identifying any additional victims for Rodney. And within a couple weeks, 21 women identified themselves and 6 families identified missing family members in those photos. Today, there are still 110 photos online for identification. I know that doesn't add up. It's because they added more, I think, photos from the portfolio after people identified themselves. But there are still 110 photos online for identification today. So in 2011, January, although he was on death row, Rodney was indicted to New York and pled not guilty to the murder of Cornelia Riley. Do you remember Cornelia? She's the flight attendant.
Yes.
Whose case grew cold. And then Ellen Jane Hover, the socialite.
Yes.
Both of those he was being charged for in New York, so they had to fly him over to New York to go to that trial. In March 2011, California police said they linked Rodney to the disappearance of 19-year-old Pamela Lamson. She went to the Fisherman's Wharf to meet with a photographer and never returned. Her body was found near a hiking trail in San Francisco. She was also badly beaten and naked, and unfortunately, there was no DNA or fingerprint evidence to prove it was him, but they believe that there's plenty of other evidence that Rodney did murder her. So in June of 2012, he decided to plead guilty because he wanted to go back to LA. Not because he wanted to admit to anything.
Yeah,
he pled guilty because he wanted to go back to LA. He was tired of being in New York. January 7th, 2013, he received 25 more years added onto his sentence, but he was not sent back to California due to his failing health. Sorry, Rodney, you can't go back to California. You're going to have to spend the rest of your godforsaken life in New York prisons. The authorities released a collection of photographs in efforts to identify any more potential victims, like I said. And then in 2016, Rodney was charged for another murder of 28-year-old Christine Ruth Thornton, whose family recognized her photograph that he took of her back in June of 1977. Quote, she was seen hitchhiking and was never heard from again. And in 1982, her body was found in Wyoming off of a highway. And her body wasn't confirmed until 2015 when they were able to match the DNA samples provided from the family. Rodney admitted to taking the photo, but not to killing the woman, who was approximately 6 months pregnant at the time of death. And that was in 2016. And in 2021, July 24th, Rodney Alcala dies of natural causes at the age of 77 while waiting for execution on California's death row. After his death, a woman named Morgan Rowan came forward and said that she was also attacked by him in 1968 as a 16-year-old in Hollywood. She said that he approached her at a teen club and she got in his car so that he could take her to IHOP. And instead, he took her to his apartment, claiming that he was having a party, and he dragged her into his room, beat and raped her, and her friends found her, broke in, and saved her from his apartment. But they never reported it until he passed away in 2021. Throughout his criminal career, Rodney is suspected of many more murders, and the fullest extent of his crimes probably will never be known. But motherfucker's dead. Unfortunately, God had to take him out before the California system could. I cannot believe how many times he was on death row and they couldn't get it together to get him out. At least every jury was really on the people's side. The jury was like, let's get this motherfucker out of here. Let's get him off the streets. So that is the crimes of Rodney Alcala, or if you'd like to refer to him as the dating game killer. Now, the reason I added him to the list of podcast topics I wanted to do was because he was referred to as the dating game killer. But his dating game, like the fact that he was on the dating game is by far the least of his worries. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't kill the person who was on the dating game. I don't know why they called him that, but I think it's just because it's really rare that you have like TV show appearances by serial killers in the height of their serial killing, which I don't know. It's just strange to me. But anyway, that's all I got for him. I have a bunch of podcast topics that are already researched, and I just wanted to get this one off my plate, to be honest, which is why I forced you not to do a true crime the last time. I feel like we feel bad every time I do a true crime because it's like just having to listen to this awful person, usually an awful man, doing awful fucking unspeakable things.
Yeah.
I guess so are your true crimes, because it's mostly what crime is just men doing terrible things.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's hard to transition out of terrible topics. And there was no silver lining. Oh no, the silver lining was that one group of friends broke into his apartment and rescued their friend.
Yep.
I think that could be a silver lining. There's also a bright side that they were able to find his portfolio and identify some cold case victims or missing people from their portfolio, although it's not a good thing that they were missing, but it at least gives some people closure, like families.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find some silver lining. Anyway.
Thanks, Kathryn, for that.
Do you have anything to tell the Spooky Babes before we let them go, since that was the end of my topic?
Spooky Babes, if a guy comes up to you and says, hey, I'm a photographer, I want to take photos, no.
Yeah, the answer is always
Just
no.
say no. No.
Here's the thing. He may be charismatic, and he may seem normal to you, but I just like to tell people to be safe. You know what I mean? Try to be as safe as you can. And in that, no would be the operative answer if someone wants to take your picture or give you a ride home. I want you to be as safe as possible. So say no to photographers and no to strange people who offer you rides to IHOP or to school or to home. Because once you get in the car, you can't get out.
Be careful. Use the buddy system.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not the 70s anymore, but it's still scary.
Yes, 100%.
Oh.
And you know what? If you want some fun photos taken of you, get together with your gal pals and take fun photos.
Selfies.
You don't need a stupid photographer. Your phone is like a $1,500 camera. Like come on.
Yeah.
You can take plenty good quality photos on your phone. And you and your buddies can have some good fun if you're of age, having a little bit of drinks and having some fun taking photos and photo shoots. And if you're not of age, you can just have fun taking photos and having some snacks and some Dr. Pepper.
Exactly.
Anyway.
I love the little have some drinks if you're of age.
I don't want to promote underage drinking. I didn't drink until I was 21.
Me either.
You can be honest with the Spooky Babes.
Listen.
No, I get it.
My mom and dad's logic where I'd rather you drink at home than you go to some party and get fucked up and then something happen.
That makes perfect sense. Anyway, that's besides the point, Spooky Babes. Sorry. Just be safe.
Just be safe.
Just be safe. And, was that everything? did you want to tell them to rate our podcast instead of me?
I'm gonna fuck it up.
It's not a way to fuck it up. Okay. All right. I guess it's to me. Spooky Babes, if you guys are listening to our podcast on any platform where you can rate us, please give us 5 stars or leave us a little comment. We love to read it. And just remember that you are important and you are needed and wanted, and we appreciate that you come and hang out with us every week. Right, Hayley?
Yes.
And the world is a better place with you in it, and we will see you
In your nightmares.
Stay safe. Stay safe.
Stay motherfucking safe. Buddy
Yeah.
system.